So, very welcome to Boris Folgmann from T-Systems International. His talk is Artificial Intelligence in Information Technology, AI in IT.
Thanks. Yeah, as you've seen, I've just arrived, so from the southern Germany flooding area. It was very difficult to get here. A lot of trains were delayed, were totally cancelled, so really just in time. Usually we don't do this, yeah, so we are usually early on site, and that is that we have enough time for preparing everything. But as you can see, the slides are there. So my talk is about artificial intelligence in information technology. Yeah. I'm from T-Systems. I work as a lead developer and lead architect at T-Systems in the area of DevOps and cloud. And what is T-Systems? T-Systems is the largest IT service provider in Germany, but also in the so-called DACH region, which is the German-speaking region in Central Europe. So it's Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. We are a daughter company of Deutsche Telekom, but our customers are usually large enterprises. And of course, after the ChatGPT shock, the management was very focused on getting also T-Systems totally on the AI track. And therefore, as you can see on the slide, we have in the meantime more than 50 projects across all AI disciplines and 2 dedicated AI labs. Besides this, of course, T-Systems is developing and operating software for its customers. We have 16 data centers, and as you can see, more than 26,000 employees worldwide. The Open Telecom Cloud is the largest European cloud, which is also the basement of a lot of stuff that we are doing when it comes about security and data privacy. Yeah? You can use something like a cloud that you know from the States, for example, AWS, Google, or Azure from Microsoft, but only with such a solution that we are providing, you have definitely everything when it comes to data privacy concerning German and European laws and regulations. And for this, we are providing, in the meantime, in 3 regions, our cloud. And in all of these 3 regions, you have the possibility to use up to 3 so-called availability zones. So that means if you have your software properly designed and it can make use of multiple availability zones, then you can make sure that even if there are severe problems and, for example, a whole availability zone is not available, that still your application runs and can deliver what the customer wants to see. And what is also very important for us these days, as we have the flooding in Germany, especially the German region, it's nowhere where any flood can happen. Yeah? So the region is near Magdeburg and Biere, and this area was carefully chosen also concerning everything like natural disasters. We speak about geo-redundancy when we have something like a twin-core data center, which means 2 data centers with approximately something like 20 kilometers of a distance. But now these days we want to have more, and therefore we have, of course, with the possibility of the Netherlands and Germany, we have the possibility to have hundreds of kilometers between the data centers, and therefore if you store your data in all those places and design your software accordingly, it can survive any disaster, hopefully. So what I'm doing, I'm working in the field of DevOps. DevOps is an acronym. It means development and operations. Yeah? It's a modern discipline. We're working in an agile way with our customers. The idea is to develop software and to operate the software. Usually we run the software in the cloud because the cloud offers a lot of possibilities concerning automation. So in the past, only the business code was developed. Now we are also developing stuff like infrastructure as code. So when you spin up resources on the cloud, everything is done in an automated way, and the software is tested in an automated way. The product I'm developing since 2018 and operating with my colleagues is called DevOps as a Service. And you can see that we are operating a complete tool chain for everyone who is interested in doing large-scale development and operation of software. It's a solution that is available on the internet, and we are offering it in 3 flavors or 3 alternatives. At the end, it's a best-of-breed tool chain, so it's combining both commercial software as well as open source tools. Everything is hardened and customized and very easy to use with our DevOps portal. And as you can see on the right-hand side at the top corner, last year we started to integrate new tools into it. Before, we had mostly integrated tools that were already out there in the world, commercial software, open source software, but now with the AI Engineer and IDE as a service, it's really now software developed by our own tools that have been integrated into the tool chain. One thing that is the basement of everything that we are doing is the so-called LLM Hub. This is something that is developed by a different team at T-Systems. If you run on Open Telecom Cloud, you can easily install it simply using a marketplace solution, but it's also possible to deploy it into any infrastructure that you might like. You can see it here in the lower level. That is infrastructure as a service, and as you can see, the benefit is if you use something like a Kubernetes cluster, then at the end everything looks a little bit like the same, and then we can use some automated deployment. Terraform is the tool that is being used, and all the Magenta stuff, this is what we are actually developing ourselves. If you want to use LLM Hub to develop software on your own, you can go here to this platform as a service layer, and then you would use, for example, the LLM Hub Serving API or the LLM Hub RAG API. What you're also offering, if you want to stick to the software as a service layer, that would be finally the Magenta Smart Chat. I have a screenshot, so you can a little bit imagine how it looks like. Yeah? So it's a typical telecom white Magenta web user interface, easy to use but very powerful at the end, something that you could compare with ChatGPT. But the benefit is that the LLMs are interchangeable, so you do not have to stick to a special LLM. You can choose what LLM you want to use. Then, one of the tools that will be integrated in the next weeks that is very fresh, so it was not on the first slide we have seen, is the so-called AI operator. When we start a new software project, or when we onboard some new people to an existing project, then it's very hard to train them because there is so much knowledge in documents, in some wikis written by people that are longer working already on the project. And then we have designed this AI operator, which should support in knowledge management. Yeah? That means you can, for example, go to AI operator and ask some questions, or you can ask, what would you recommend me to read? In which order? What is the most important stuff to understand in this project? That is basically what the AI operator is doing. Then in IT, we also have very often so-called ticket systems. That means somebody has a problem, he raises a ticket. This ticket needs to be read by somebody, analyzed. What's the problem? How can I solve it? And this will be also done by AI operator in the future, so that, let's say, a kind of chatbot will try to solve your problem and reach out to other people or other systems if it cannot solve the problem on its own. The interesting part here is the retrieval augmented generation. I already mentioned the RAG service, which is part of the LLM Hub, and this allows us to not only have a prompt like at ChatGPT, but instead also we have these embeddings, the text chunks, which are extracted by documents that are available inside the project we want to search for information. Then we have the AI Engineer. This is something that is already in place, which is used at T-Systems for support, especially when it comes to software development. We have found out that developers can be faster 25 to 50% if they have the power of such a tool. The idea came from a project with a very well-known large bank here in Europe, which was using some very old programming language, which I would say nobody else was using, and now the developers had more or less died out, and we needed a solution for quickly translating a lot of code from this old and unknown programming language to something modern. And this is what AI Engineer is doing. So first, you define something like a workflow, which is a configuration based on multiple prompts. So it could, for example, be something like read code in COBOL and then translate it to Java. Then also apply some clean code principles. For example, remove something like plain text passwords in the source code, replace it by more suitable technologies like reading these credentials from a credential database, for example. And it can be also used for adding documentation to a source code. Now, that's the interesting part. At the end, you are selecting a certain kind of workflow, and then on the left-hand side, you paste in what you already have, the source code, for example, and then you get the derived or translated code in the other programming language. But the interesting part is that when this prompt can also add documentation to the source code, then you can also use it on different levels. You could, for example, paste on the left-hand side some source code, and then as a result, you are asking for not a translation into a different programming language, but instead you say, please explain the code to me. Use natural words, write some kind of documentation. And of course, it means to understand what is important and what is not important, because we do not want to have documentation that is exactly the same length like the code, so the important stuff needs to be extracted. So this is also possible. And what we can also do, of course, is that on the left-hand side, we paste something like a textual representation, a specification of the actual output that you want to have, and then on the right-hand side, we get some working code. The AI Engineer is working, let's say, as a closed model. You have a web application, you have to paste in the window the source code that you want to analyze, you can copy the result. This is certainly enough for, let's say, general daily work, but it can be done better. For this, we have something else. It's called IDE as a service. When you are used to software development, you know IDE is integrated development environment. There are a lot of IDEs around in the world. Basically, it's something like a text editor. It can save, edit files, it runs the compiler, and so on. Usually on your desktop, so it's not running on a server because you want to interact with it in a very fast way. But there are possibilities to also move this on the server side. At the end, it means you're working in a web browser window, but everything runs on the server. There is certainly a drawback, if there is no network connection, it will not work, but you have other possibilities, For example, if you need a lot more power, then you can simply scale up this server because it's anyway running in the cloud and scaling is not a problem. This is what IDE as a service is doing. It's running in your web browser, but also on a server side. And it's also interesting for big data, for machine learning, because you can very easily have something like a large local machine. At least it looks like this. And for IDE as a service, we have developed a plug-in which also connects at the end to the AI code engineer. That means you have the benefit that the AI engineer in this case can automatically read all the source codes that you have in your current project. So there is already context available. It already knows all the source code in the project, and then of course also all the documentation that is available, and therefore it can be like a developer. Maybe just as a junior developer you will need to check the code a little bit, but IDE as a service is definitely a help for you. Okay, fine. Now that was very fast, but doesn't matter, then we have more time for the Q&A. By the way, here of course you have a QR code. You can also visit our website, devopssystems.net, to learn a little bit about the product. And I'm here until Thursday together with 3 colleagues. We have a nice poster. You are invited. I think the poster show starts tomorrow in the afternoon to meet with us at the poster. And yeah, I was so in a hurry, I cannot show it to you, but I have some fantastic magenta rubber ducks. So if you want to have a present for somebody at home or for yourself, yeah, it's a limited number, yeah, so visit us at our poster. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Time for questions.
Yes, thank you. So Sebastian Trimpe from RWTH Aachen. So you mentioned one use case of the large language models, if I'm not mistaken, to be basically you want to understand like what's the documentation one should read, or you mentioned like what documentation should I read first, etc. So I assume because you're T-Systems, I assume it's mostly about technical questions then. So my question is, are you concerned whether the information that the large language model then gives you is accurate? And if you're concerned, like how would you ensure this when you use the system in practice?
Okay, of course, at the end, you have to trust first the LLM that you have chosen, so it is possible to use different models. And you have to trust, of course, what at the end the algorithm has done. Yeah. So if you ask something about the project, of course, the idea is that you can trust the information. But I still would, as everything is still new, some months old, I would still recommend cross-check, if in doubt, with the original documentation. And I have to say that very often also in the original documentation, not everything is clear. There are contradictions. Yeah? So we find that it's very hard to maintain large documentation over time because especially in IT, stuff is changing. So you will always have stuff that is already outdated. People in the project might know it, but nobody had time to improve the documentation, unfortunately.
But I mean, I guess it's not only about information being outdated or not, because we know that large language models are not always giving a correct answer, right? And they can come up with certain things. So how do you deal with this in practice? I mean, do you check? Do you then basically have experienced engineers try the system and then check with their experience and then correct, or is that not a concern so far?
I would say that there's not a real concern at the moment, but especially the AI operator is something that is still in development, and I'm sure that we will come back to what you asked for.
Yeah, thank you. I would also expect that you will need to come back to this.
Yeah, you come to our post and then we will discuss the details. Thank you.
Hi, Sebastian Siegel from Forschungszentrum Jülich. So my question would actually go in the same direction. Are you concerned about loopholes that are integrated in general into the code by large language models, so that after some time it will be known that GPT-4, for example, if it translates code, it will always in place this certain loophole that attackers could make use of?
That's certainly interesting thing to consider. But what we have to see here is that what we already have in place, even without AI, are a lot of static source code analyzers. So we already have tools that are checking source code for potential bugs, for vulnerabilities. So if, let's say, an AI tool would open some kind of security hole, then it would be, let's say, detected in the next phase of the build pipeline. But it's definitely a good point to think about, that the LLM, of course, should have no problem at best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to Boris Folgmann again. And now it's time for coffee break, and we see each other in about 30 minutes, 10 minutes to 4 o'clock.
Thanks.